Welcome back to the program, and welcome to London, where Britain voting to leave the European Union seems to have almost tilted the world on its axis. It is a decision that no one saw coming, but already it's created some disturbing divisions. Old against young, rich against poor, and most worryingly, locals against foreigners. But there is one person who couldn't be happier. Did I read correctly where you wept when you heard the result?
Well, I don't know about that.
A little tear?
Perhaps. Perhaps.
Tears of joy.
I was pretty happy.
Nigel Farage is the controversial and confident face of Brexit, Britain's exit from the European Union. Do you take credit for this vote to leave?
Well, it wouldn't have happened without me, would it? I mean, come on, let's be honest about it. I mean, I've been doing this now for 25 years, and I thought for much of that time that I would probably end up as the patron saint of lost causes.
Farage is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, UKIP, a one-time fringe group of right-wingers which is now responsible for the biggest shake-up in British politics. It was Farage who forced the Brexit referendum. And in successfully campaigning to leave Europe, has also claimed the scalp of David Cameron, the British Prime Minister.
I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it.
And David Cameron never saw this coming.
No. I almost, in a slightly weak moment, felt a little bit sorry for him. Because he's not a bad bloke. He's not a bad chap. You know, he doesn't. There's no malice in him in that sense. He just got himself on the wrong end of an argument at the wrong point in history.
He truly didn't think he could lose.
No. No one did.
The vote was won by the narrowest of margins. 52% to leave the European Union, 48% to remain. It's a result that's left much of the country shocked and bitterly disappointed.
People feel very passionately. We want our voices to be heard.
I think the government would say your voices have been heard, you've decided.
Well, but the problem is the rest
voices.
Yes. And actually everybody in London has been extremely depressed and upset ever since the vote.
Since having made their decision, the people of Britain have not stopped talking. Even on a dreary day in London, they still come out to express their feelings. What's left is a nation that's now divided. For many, Britain is no longer great. The kingdom, not so united. And the European Union, having lost one of its biggest partners, looks a little vulnerable.
But most serious of all in the aftermath of the vote is what appears to be the ugly resurgence of racism. Why do you think the majority of those who did vote decide they wanted out? Was it a vote of fear?
I think there were many reasons. Certainly fear of immigrants played a part. There was a strong racist tone to the message put out by UKIP.
Constitutional lawyer and prominent Australian Geoffrey Robertson is scathing of Nigel Farage and his party's campaign, but makes the point that the referendum may never be enforced unless members of Parliament vote it through.
Britain is in a mess. I'll tell you exactly why. Because it doesn't have a constitution. And this referendum has no binding force at all. The act they passed last year to set it up, Mr. Cameron failed to say that it needed a clear majority. He failed to say that it was binding. So we're still in Europe until members of Parliament vote to take us out.
So you're saying David Cameron blew it?
Oh,
he just didn't do his homework.
It's quite a tragedy.
It's not a done deal.
It's not over yet. We've already seen the polls that 1 million people want to change their minds. So I think come November, when I think the action will return to Parliament, we may well find that Britain rethinks.
Do you worry that MPs won't vote it through when they meet in November?
Well, it may not be legally binding, but it's morally binding. I mean, look, the one thing I'm certain of is we're leaving the European Union. I have no doubt about that.
Nigel Farage, until recently, was seen as an outsider. His right-wing ideology considered too extreme. But in recent years, his tough views on immigration have struck a chord.
Indeed, you've been called a racist.
Well, for years. But you see, the thing is, I first said in 2004 that if we open the doors to 8 and then 10 former communist countries where, incomes are kind of 10% of what they are in this country, that it would lead to a massive migratory flow. And I've been condemned and criticised continuously since 2004, but I've been right.
Farage has been a member of the European Parliament for nearly 2 decades and has single-mindedly spent all that time fighting to get Britain out of the EU.
When I came here 17 years ago and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
In the European Parliament, was that a good moment? Did you enjoy that?
Oh, I loved every minute of it. I mean, for the people in the gallery, very cheap theatre tickets. Look, I stood up there and my intention was to say, look, the reason we've left is X, Y, Z. If you don't listen to us, more countries will leave. But when it comes to it, let's be grown up. Let's have a grown-up conversation about trade. And all they did was boo, whistle, jeer, so I told them their fortune.
You told them, I told you so. Ultimately.
I suppose I did. Well, allow me that. Having been abused there for 17 years, allow me just a little moment of gloating.
The impact for everyday Britons is still being assessed. Global markets have the jitters, and the future for banks, businesses and jobs is very uncertain. And that's how it may be for some time to come.
How will history judge Nigel Farage?
Badly. He's a racist. And I think his misleading of people in this referendum was, of course, part of the reason why the majority, narrow majority, voted to leave.
I hope that history will judge me as being the person that stood up and said, the emperor has got no clothes.
And how will history judge this moment?
I hope that it'll be the moment when Britain got its self-confidence back and when Britain once again began to re-engage with its friends all over the world and became once again a truly global nation.
You see no room for regret down the path?
How can you regret freedom? We've just voted for freedom. We've just voted to take back control of our country.